let's get back to the hidden costs of being black in America. One of the hidden costs of being black is bail. My son's I don't want to talk about this. I will talk about my personal life. I can't talk about my children's personal life. But there is let's say a 19-year-old black kid who I know in Los Angeles, a saint. I've known him since he was 2 years old, remains a perfect human being, except for the fact that he's black, and he was sitting in his car one day and two cops pulled guns on him. Now, I've never had cops pull guns on me. That alone sends a message to a 19-year-old kid, this really isn't your country. Or that would cause, for me, PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, having two cops pull guns on me. Long story short, 6 nights in jail, ended up dropping out of school for a while, and it was expensive, and he just wanted it to go away, and it's gone away. And as a white Jew, I kept saying, give me the name of the cop, give me the name, and he was saying to me, you don't understand. Like, I understand. You were innocent. It was false arrest. You don't. And I've gotten kind of close to him since the arrest, before, but now more so, because I met one of his friends who's also black, talks about walking out of a record store. He fit a certain profile, 3 hours on a curb, handcuffed, cops telling him to shut up, not to make trouble, referencing Trayvon Martin, getting a ticket for jaywalking, missing his bus because a cop wanted to mess with him. If you're black in L.A., you're living in an apartheid state, right?
It's what I call the black tax. You're going to pay the black tax. The black tax is the price that black people pay because of stereotypes about them. And certainly you've described a few. I've had to pay it recently. Just a couple years ago, my dogs are barking. I figure it's the mailman. So I'm going to go out there and intercept them. When I walk out the door, cross the threshold, there are 3 L.A. sheriffs standing out there. They see me. And you see, and David, your audience.
How many times? I have a theory about you. You're kind. You've got, how would you describe your...
I have a big fro, that some people call, depending on the interpretation of the perceiver, can be seen as a halo or a thundercloud.
You're asking for it, aren't you?
Yes.
You're a graduate of Harvard, Berkeley Law School. You teach law at USC. Yes. You are begging the cops to racially profile you.
My afro is my hoodie. Absolutely. This is my hoodie. And I walk around wearing my ideas on my head, and it does cause them to be more scared of me. When I walked out of my house, across that threshold, when they saw me, I was in my jeans. I wasn't choked up like I am now, David. I wasn't wearing the suit, the black man's passport. Right. I didn't have the tie, etc. I just had my jeans and my sweats, and I walked out.
And you're consciously asking for it on a daily basis. In other words,
on a daily basis, but not when I was walking out of my house.
But I'm sorry to interrupt you, but because I know if I were you, I know what I'm like. If I had your credentials and I knew I could skate and mess with the cops and get them into trouble and experience firsthand what black men go through and then get these cops in trouble, I'd be a little afraid because these things can go awry, but you are, for all intents and purposes, not on a daily basis, but I can tell you want to take the temperature of the LA police.
Absolutely.
How dangerous has it gotten for you since, as a USC professor, you've been at USC since 1995. You're a made man.
Yeah.
You're pretty protected. How hairy does it get?
Well, so to speak, right? Because that's what happened. When I grew this hair 3 years ago, as I was writing my book, the book I just finished, that's when this fro came out. Before this fro and this beard, I looked a lot more like Obama. than like Huey P. Newton.
Okay.
Okay. Once the here came out, okay, all of a sudden I had these kinds of experiences like I'm just describing to you, where here I am, I have 3 sons in college, I'm walking out of my home, I got a gray beard, but the afro, all of the nappy hair that's spiking out over my head, defying gravity is, and on top of that, I'm 6'5", it has made these officers pull their weapons, point them at my torso and head, and say, freeze, get your hands up. In response to which I was about to make the snarky observation that I can't do both of those at the same time.
Right.
But I realized that the one who had the gun pointed in my head, I looked at it, I saw that the hand was shaking, that fight or flight adrenaline response. And I realized that anything could happen here. We could have a mistake.
Right.
And that's when I dummied up. There was no snarky comment.
Right.
They put me in the back of the car in a caged back seat while they went through the house. They posted up a sniper across the street. A phalanx of officers went through the house. All that I was there, of course, were a couple dogs. My pet dogs were the only ones there. They said they'd heard that there'd been a report of a gunshot in the neighborhood, and they came to investigate where that gunshot came from. When I walked out of the front door, I looked like the most reasonable suspect, with this nappy so-and-so, and that's when the weapons were drawn. So that's the black tax, and it does become dicey and precarious when you see that hand shaking.
Yeah. Was he white or black?
Black, actually.
Okay.
Black. That's the thing about stereotypes that we learn from looking at the empirical literature, that it causes both blacks and whites to respond more negatively to someone who's black and ambiguous,
Right, and the shaking hand of the black cop is of it being an issue of class,
yes,
not race in many cases. So you do get hassled by the cops. You saw the shaking hand. Did you have empathy with the cop, or were you completely outraged by it?
No. I have empathy with all profilers in this sense, David, that it is a normal human response to consider race along with gender, along with size, when you're assessing someone's dangerousness. And the way we have our cognitive structures are built in America right now with the cultural belief system we've all been swimming in so long, associating black males with violence. When we see black males, we automatically get, even racially liberal people on an unconscious level, and then it can percolate up to a conscious level, automatically get more nervous around blacks. So it doesn't surprise me that the black officer, like the white officer, would respond on the basis of this ubiquitous stereotype of scary big black men. And I did feel some sympathy for him in the same way I felt some sympathy for, and this is going to surprise you, George Zimmerman and the George Zimmermans of the world. And I know that the problem isn't with necessarily what a George Zimmerman does in a situation in which he's confronting somebody who looks scary to him. The problem is getting to that situation in the first place. Why did you profile him in the first place? Why did you stalk him?
The cultural brainwashing.
Why did you run up on him like that? But once you're there, if someone turns a corner, I've turned a corner on colleagues and they've actually screamed out loud, with my new look, right? Because it just looks so surprising and a little scary to them. So what we have to, and you know what, I'm going to say one more radical thing, David, that might sound a little odd, but I've been driven to this point in thinking about these class issues as well. I think that the black tax, the fact that there's racial profiling, there's a silver lining in that. Even though in my book, Negrophobia, I criticize it roundly and I attack profiling and all that. So I know that whole argument. But the silver lining in the black tax and racial profiling is black middle class hates it. Ellis Coase wrote a book about 15 years ago called Rage of a Privileged Class, about all these middle class and upper class blacks who achieved all of this professionally, and yet they were being profiled, they were being discriminated against, microaggressions in all kinds of ways, and they hated it. And my response now is the fact that you hate it is a good thing, because as long as the poor black males who give rise to those stereotypes and give credence to those statistical generalizations are trapped in those ghettos and doing that disproportionate crime, then they're going to keep on profiling you and mistaking you for them middle class black man. As long as they don't look good, you don't look good, black bourgeoisie. So the only way you're going to get rid of profiling is to do something about that poverty. Lift them out of poverty so they're not committing disproportionate crimes, because the crime rate between middle class blacks and whites is the same. So it's all the poor blacks that are doing it. Lift them out of poverty and you won't be profiled as much. That's the silver lining in the black tax.
The problem is poverty more than it is prejudice.
Yes. In profiling cases, it's poverty that's driving it. There's a separate place for race, too. We can get into that, the cognitive unconscious.
Right.
But there's a special independent significance to class, and we have to acknowledge that. We have to recognize it, and we have to work on it.